Hey guys, it's Tatas Tuesday, the day of the week where I tackle a subject almost guaranteed to make someone spurg on the internet. Yes, is it spurg or spurge? I've only seen it in writing on message boards, the word spurg. Spurg. It's spurg, right? Anyway, people are going to spurg over this topic. I know it. And I almost didn't cover this topic, even though it's important and even though it's absolutely related to, my wheelhouse. I miss when wheelhouses were called bailiwicks. I miss it's my bailiwick. I like that. I like that term better than wheelhouse. Wheelhouse makes me feel like a little hamster, and I'm constantly on the wheel. But I'm really digressing, aren't I? Yes, I am. Back on topic, Liana. Um, I didn't want to tackle this topic because it intersects with some very very sensitive points with gamers, and I'm going to try to be as careful as I am and explain why these these new findings don't compound stereotypes, because I think that's very important, and why it's important to have people who were gamers first, gender pundits second, um, tackling these topics, because unlike many people dealing with gender in gaming, I understand this sensitivity. Like, I get it. And it's not a question of I intellectually understand it. I've felt the hurt of being, the misogynist neckbeard slander. Windows 10, I don't want to buy you. Go away. Okay. So, also, I apologize before I get into this for if you hear some weird background noise. One of my neighbors, or a contractor working with my neighbors, is running a band saw, like a circular saw, and it's really loud. But I've been waiting for them to stop, and they're not. So allons-y. I picked this version of this story, this Business Insider story. One, because the headline actually inverts the issue, and I found that a very interesting tangential observation. But I also didn't want to take something from a gaming site, just because of the sensitivities involving in game reporting, and I couldn't find this story covered on the Escapist. So I didn't want to take one of the hot button sites and distract from the issues. So I picked things that were good and neutral, because this is one of these issues where gaming is a great canary in the mine shaft for issues that affect greater culture. In that, as they say very 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 scientifically, whether female initiated disruption of a male hierarchy incites hostile behavior from poor performing males who stand to lose the most status. This is a very interesting thing to do via Xbox Live. And the thing I want to be super clear about with this is this a problem unique to gaming? No. As I said, no, it's not. And I'm going to repeat myself a lot on this issue because I understand the sensitivities. What they basically did here, whoopsie, what they basically did here was used Halo 3 on Xbox Live to test how people reacted to female voices playing with them and male voices playing with them. And what they found were that the lower skilled players were more hostile towards a female voiced teammate, especially when performing poorly. In contrast, lower skilled players behaved submissively towards a male voiced player in the identical scenario. Do we know specifically why? No, we can only infer this based on other studies that intersect with this one. But what is very important well, also, okay, let's get the positives. Conversely, players who were better at the game were nicer to their female teammates because they, the authors suggest because they had less to fear and they wanted to get the women's attention. Now, we don't know that for sure. What we do know is if you pwn, you're not an asshole to women. Yay, right? Yay. And, ironic photo right there. Let's stop people from spurging over that photo. There we go. Okay, so The great thing about this study, great thing, is that the subjects didn't know they were being studied. That's awesome. This is what we don't get in so many studies of this type, is that people didn't know they were being observed. Fantastic. This has huge implications for the power of games to study greater social phenomenon, because of the very fact that people can explore the way people interact with each other without them knowing they're being observed. This is critical. This is awesome. However, based on the information I just gave you, sexists are worse at video games is not a fair conclusion. And this is the first thing I want to deal with when talking about these issues, because one of the things I want to do in talking about these topics again and again and again and again, my ultimate goal is not for anyone to care what I think. My ultimate goal is to educate people on issues relating to gender and the study of gender and other things, but my area of expertise is gender and gaming. I want people to be able to take tools I provide them through repetition as well as other things and engage in these studies and the coverage of these studies in a meaningful way so they can do it for themselves. I have zero interest in telling people what to think or how to think. I am giving people tools so that they can go on their own journey, because I think that's the most productive thing. I don't think anybody responds to being lectured to. So this is a classic example of a bit of media that got all the details of the story right, but summarized it incorrectly. It wasn't that sexists are worse at video games. It's that those who were less good at video games became sexist or showed sexist behaviors. And, you know, that is apparently linked to low position on the hierarchy. Now, tea break. Tea. I love tea. We see this in other places, and this is when I start getting really uncomfortable in where we're going. And but this is the point where we have to be brave in the face of knowing someone is going to take this the wrong freaking way. And this is what keeps me going in terms of gender and gaming, because at the end of the day, I take crap from, you know, the rad femmes and some not so rad femmes who just think the rad femmes are the, you know, OTF, one true feminist. And I take crap from the MRAs and the you know, card-carrying misogynists. And you notice I did not say they were the same thing. I said MRAs and card-carrying misogynists, not MRAs, the card-carrying misogynists. I am not saying MRAs are misogynists. Back the fuck off, Men's Rights Edmonton and A Voice for Men. You can drop your catty slander of me. Thank you. For the record, I do not think someone is automatically a misogynist or automatically a bad person because they are a men's rights activist. I think that everybody should be judged by their own conduct and how they promote their views. Are we clear? Good, because I'm tired of the nonsense. Now, over on the other side, I'm not going to abandon gaming to people like Anita Sarkeesian because this is hard, okay? This is extremely hard to talk about. This is exceptionally uncomfortable. Do I like having to talk about this stuff knowing I'm a minority and knowing there are so many hurt feelings and knowing there's so much reactionary knee-jerk bullshit going on? No, I hate it. I just want to be a gamer. I don't want to be a girl gamer. I don't want to be a girl who plays games. I want my gender to be irrelevant regarding whether I know what I'm talking about in games. Now, is gender relevant to someone's experience? Of course it is. You know, Race is relevant. Gender is relevant. Background is relevant. It's all relevant because it's a piece of who a person is. And I think a person should absolutely have the right to say something made me uncomfortable or I don't like this element of this game or this culture without people freaking out, dogpiling them, and calling their cred into question. That's ridiculous, but it still happens. And why? Because people are terrified of people who don't really give a hairy crap about games, who are just trying to make a name for themselves and build up their cred outside of games and using gaming as a scapegoat to basically earn a place outside of gaming. Gaming is a means to an end. It's not it's not something that people have an emotional investment in when we talk about gender and gaming. And that's why I keep doing this, even though I hate the results. Do I like being in the middle of a culture war every day of my life? No, I really don't. But if people like me don't start standing up and discussing these things from a moderate place, well, we're leaving the terms of the dialogue to the radicals, and that never ends well. So let's go on. The reason I was hesitant to get into this is the first time I came across this concept of low-ranking males going after women because they feel they're losing status in a male hierarchy. Male hierarchy, by the way, is another word for patriarchy. If you guys prefer the term male hierarchy, I'm quite happy to switch to that term. It means the same fucking thing. It means a male-dominated hierarchy. So if you're happier with that word and you don't like the word patriarchy because it's bandied around the way rabbits shit, I'm fine with that. But the first time I came across this, it's called aggrieved entitlement. And the first time I came across this was when I was researching a documentary on school shootings. Yeah, I do a lot of strange things for fun. But the problem is you get headlines, and this is an actual paper, okay? This is not an article. This is an actual paper. This is a peer-reviewed paper. It appeared in the Health Sociology Review, okay? So let's not freak out over this and start ripping it apart. This has been peer reviewed, okay? And not by a circle jerk think tank that likes to sidestep the peer review by creating their own peers. Suicide by mass murder, masculinity, aggrieved entitlement, and rampage school shootings. What I found when researching school shootings was that the one through line, the one key thing was not mental illness or social hierarchy or access to firearms or whatever, any of that stuff. It was this concept called aggrieved entitlement. Aggrieved entitlement, meaning you thought you had something and you lost it and you will do anything to get it back. Now, in this case, the abstract was school shootings have become more common in the United States in recent years, yet as media portrayals of these rampages shock the public, the characterization of this violence obscures an important point. Many of these crimes culminate in suicide, and they are almost universally committed by males. Notice it says almost universally, good for them. We examined 3 recent American cases which involve suicide to elucidate how the culture of hegemonic masculinity in the U.S. creates a sense of aggrieved entitlement conducive to violence. This sense of entitlement simultaneously frames suicide as an appropriate instrumental behavior for these males to underscore their violent enactment of masculinity. Now, that's the specific focus of this paper. It doesn't mean that aggrieved entitlement as a concept is driven by masculinity. It means that masculinity in this case is the commodity that the person who is a subject of aggrieved entitlement feels they have lost. You know, that concept of being emasculated. Well, the only reason that being emasculated matters. The only reason it's a bad thing is because our culture values masculinity. Now, is there, an effeminizing or effeminated? Is there an equivalent? Because this is the first thing you have to do when you tackle a gender topic. Flip the genders, see how it works when the scripts are flipped. So, is there an equivalent defeminizing that it results in a loss of social status? Well, that it's a little murkier, isn't it? I mean, there are instances where, the whole thing, you're not pretty, and prettiness is associated with femininity. That's one thing, but then you see people going back to, Marlene Dietrich or Madonna, who adopt, that top hat and tails shtick, deliberately adopting male gender signifiers, and people think that's sexy. Now they still have the coiffed hair and makeup, so they still have those feminine gender signifiers as well. But then, you jump forward to people like Ellen DeGeneres, Rachel Maddow, who don't engage in those, feminine performances at all. And they're still highly regarded in their fields. Now, do they still get the catty, she's ugly, or, I wish she'd take more pride in her appearance, or she's mannish. I guess mannish is it is you do. So there we go. That criticism of women as mannish is the equivalent of men being emasculated. It's all about, and that's where the hegemonic element comes in. Both our gender binary is too restrictive right now. And that's what people like me who engage in gender consciously are, looking at. Is gender in our culture too restrictive? Does it define, or does it actually impede? And what this study is saying is that it might actually impede some people. That, is a man held up for more criticism if they are unemployed than a woman? Well, to an extent, yes, because women, were homemakers up until World War II. The default status for a woman was a homemaker. So men are judged more harshly when they don't have a job. Men are much more defined by their jobs. So in periods of economic downturn, when a lot of people are out of work, men struggle with identity and they struggle with self-esteem more than women. Now, does this mean we should focus on jobs for men first? No, we should focus on jobs for everybody. But we have to be sensitive to the fact that unemployment, as a rule, of course there are exceptions. I hate being unemployed. It makes me horribly depressed. But I don't even like being underemployed. I like to be able to pay my own bills and be self-sufficient, so I get that. And if it's worse for men, good Lord, it's awful, and I don't want to generalize because I don't believe in that. I think that everyone is an individual, and individualism has to come first, but I will accept that it is more likely to be more difficult for men. You see how specific we have to be? That's why Twitter is so difficult as the primary mode of communication in popular awareness for this stuff, because Twitter is the enemy of nuance. You only have 140 characters, for God's sake. But this is why I was hesitant to get into this whole thing, because hegemonic masculinity sounds a lot like toxic masculinity. It's not quite the same thing. But, I've talked about toxic masculinity before, so go ahead, watch that video, go to my channel, find it. It wasn't that long ago. But, hegemonic masculinity, can we deny that we are too rigid on guys about what they're expected to be? I mean, masculinity is connected to things that, men can't even control, like how tall they are. That's bullshit. I've never understood this desire for tall men. I don't get it. Who the fuck cares how tall a dude is? I so don't. But, I know it's a thing that some women won't date men shorter than them. And that's stupid, but it happens. Why? Because women feel like they are achieving greater status by being next to a tall boyfriend or husband as opposed to a man that's shorter than them. It's stupid. It's stupid. But again, that goes back to that gender norm of man is protector and man is provider. And it's all bullshit. And this is why those, sexist assumptions become so critical to examine and dismantle. Because if we go back to this stuff, we realize how silly we are. And when we're actually, figuring out who we are and what we wanted of life, it's very important to distinguish between the things we are actually personally attracted to, which we can't do anything about, and the things we are seeking for status, which we can do something about. And status is all about the aggrieved entitlement issue. If you're still not clear on aggrieved entitlement, what aggrieved entitlement is in the instance of masculinity, for instance, the way it works in school shootings. And I will apologize in advance for some generalization. I want to do this fast. It's the whole rule of if you can't explain something in 30 seconds, people aren't going to stay with you. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. The idea that masculinity is a valuable commodity in our society. A man, likely of relatively low status, that loner that kept to himself, the whole thing. You don't see CEOs of Fortune 500 companies going on spree shootings, right? You see the disenfranchised going on spree shootings. Because what happens is they feel that they have lost their social capital connected to their masculinity past a critical point where they feel entitled to do anything possible, including commit violence, to get it back. Now, the theory is that the suicide comes in is, okay, we've redeemed our masculinity. Now we're going to lose it again if we go to prison, because we know what happens to guys like that in prison. So quit while you're ahead. And that's where the suicide comes in, theoretically. Theoretically, we don't know for certain. This is a hypothesis, okay? But it fits, right? It fits. It's not for sure, it's not fact, but it's a hypothesis that fits. That is how aggrieved entitlement works in this case. Now, we also found it as to pull away from something that gamers are going to be, games don't cause violence, games don't cause shooting. Yes, I know. That's why I'm so cautious about this topic. So I'm going to show you something else, okay? Something that has nothing to do with gaming. Voting. The Republican Party. The loss of the white male voter as the dominant force of the political landscape. That, there's a book by Michael Kimmel called American Masculinity at the End of an Era. It's about this in the political format. And I'm showing you guys this just to show that it's not just the gamer stereotype cross-section of real-world violence and gaming that's an issue here. It's everything, right? I mean, why do you think women feel like they can destroy the reputations of other women because of some loss? They feel why does a woman think they have the right to shame another woman on the internet because they cheated with their boyfriend cheated? Why go after the woman? Well, aggrieved entitlement. This sense that there is status to having a boyfriend who is loyal, who is faithful. And it wasn't the guy, because the idea is men cheat in this thinking. Of course they are. The status, the feminine associated status is in a man that doesn't cheat. So a woman reducing your status that way, the thinking is, gives you the right to freak the out. I try not to swear too much. Freak the fuck out. This is time for a fuck. Freak the fuck out. Put shit on the internet. Get into a fight. Commit physical violence. Destroy his car. It's a country music song in the making, and I love that country song just because country is not about the good things people do, right? Rebel, outlaw country is all about those bad inclinations we all have, and that's why I love that song. It's feminist outlaw country. And and that's what I love about the aggrieved entitlement theory, and that's what I don't like about it being put in a box that it is only about masculinity. What I like about the aggrieved entitlement theory is that it potentially explains a much wider swath of behaviors. We don't have to just ignore the occasional female spree killer, for instance, like, the woman who inspired the song I Don't Like Mondays. And we don't have to count her out. We just have to go, okay, what was she aggrieved about? What did she feel entitled to? And the reason, and I'll show you the other article that I pulled up about this, I don't like mass shootings, misogyny, and the aggrieved entitlement of white males. It's not quite the same thing. Misogyny and aggrieved entitlement are not quite the same thing. And that's why I think it's important to promote this theory. The reason that you see a cross-section of I'm going to go back to the study because I don't like this headline. The headline has served its purpose. The interesting thing, the thing I love about aggrieved entitlement theory, and this is from 2010, so it's had some time to be tested. Again, this is not one study. There's been follow-up from all this stuff, and it's important to have that. It's held for 5 years. That's important, right? Not one study. I can't stress this enough. This is an example study. There are others that have tested this work as well. But the thing I like is why, how does aggrieved entitlement explain why white men are the most likely to commit spree killings, serial killings, and rampage killings? Well, because they have greater expectations than everyone else, don't they? If you're a white man and you fail at life, you don't have an excuse that's acceptable in the popular culture, right? It's not that, well, the deck was stacked against you because you're black, or the deck was stacked against you because of sexism. You had everything going for you and you still couldn't make it. And people lash out. Now, does that necessarily mean they hate women? No. Does that necessarily mean they hate black people? No. But it does make them willing to lash out against the members of less enfranchised groups to regain their own status within the entitled group. That is the difference. And that's why you see so many people committing acts that the acts themselves are horrendously sexist, but the people themselves do not identify as sexist. And the reason for that is probably because it's not that they hate women. It's that they feel like the expectations on them as a man are higher. There is this entitlement, this idea that, work hard, do your work, pass this baseline, and you are entitled to a job. You are entitled to a nice place to live. That is a narrative that was established for the white middle class. Everybody else doesn't have that expectation. They understand that they are not enveloped into that entitlement. And so there are other issues that go into that. Black on black crime, for instance, because they recognize nobody's going to come here and hand them anything. They have to fight for it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a healthier place to be the member of an oppressed group. It just means the outcomes, the negative outcomes, the toxic element of being part of that manifests differently. Like another example is the promiscuity in the gay community. That led to the spread of AIDS. Well, that wasn't because gay people are sluts. It's because gay people had no expectation that they were entitled to get married. They couldn't get married. So what's the point of forming those deep social connections to another person? Those deeper layers. Everything became very physical, and there you go. And other people have written about that with more expertise than me. But this is the wonderful thing about the concept of aggrieved entitlement that causes people to lash out. And I think it's great that someone has made the connection to gaming, because it shows it's not games. It's games as a way to test much larger social issues. And that's amazing. Like, that's the power of games. We should all be proud to be gamers when we see games are being used to make us understand the human condition better. That's amazing. Like, that's great. We should all be cheering this. But because of the negative assumptions people have about gamers, it becomes a stupid us versus them fight. And because of my, unique status in that I'm a gamer. I've been a gamer, since I was 3. And so, I don't remember what it's like to not be a gamer. I don't remember what it was like to start playing games. I was too young. I don't have that story. This is how I got into games. I never got into games. I am in games. It's been a part of my identity my whole life. I'm a woman, so that takes me out of the, default gamer thing. But no, bullshit. I am a default gamer. I am a gamer, and no label is going to take that away from me. And there's my aggrieved entitlement. I lash out when, stop it, phone. I know I'm over time, but I'm finishing here. But that phone's Kanye West. He's going to let me finish, but Beyonce should have been a gamer. But my aggrieved entitlement is I get really defensive when people start going, of course you think that you're a girl, about gamers. And that's when I immediately go, screw you. And I do. I get nasty. I lash out. And it's like, that is somebody coming in and busting my status down as a gamer. So I get this, right? I get this. And you immediately have this feeling of, who do you think you are? Because let's face it, I rely on status as a gamer to get anybody to listen to me on anything else connected to games. And if people come through and try to discredit me through these, not a real gamer smears, yeah, I do get defensive because they are making it more difficult for me to get from one place to another. So I get aggrieved and I start going, I have the right to be here. I have the right to talk about games. Is that true? Does anybody have a right to talk about games? Well, it's sure not enshrined in any constitution, but I believe I am entitled to this outlet. I believe I am entitled to this soapbox. And so I get very defensive and lash out when people try to take that from me, or when I feel people have taken it from me. When men's rights groups call me a liar and say I'm an abuser and all that stuff. Well, that is a loss of status, isn't it? Because some people believe it and they peel off 10 or 15 fans I may have had. Oh, I'm done with her. She's this. So they have caused me to lose status. So, according to aggrieved entitlement, yeah, people lash out when they have taken something from them they feel they deserve or they feel they have earned. And when that sense of unfairness kicks in, it can explain almost every gamer fight under the sun if you think about it. And that's why I think this is a great, great, great tool. The concept of aggrieved entitlement. So please read more about it. You guys don't have access to the full papers, unfortunately. This is what sucks about academia. It's not, the full study is not involved. You can at least get the concept down. And maybe I'll do more about this on Friday. I don't know. But thanks for listening. I'm too long. But I hope this recontextualizes the issue for at least some of you. But not Momo, because he's asleep and snoring right now. Thanks for your support, Momo. My cat loves me.